Hmm? Ah!
Whatever, like.
Yeah, reactions.
Well, now you can put love or wow or cry or. I want someone to cry because I'm going to an event.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just from this point forward start clicking the cry or angry one on every single one of them, no matter what.
That would be hilarious.
Somebody posts some really happy news, cry.
Podcast Junkies, episode 97. In case you missed it last week, I went on location, CBS Radio, and I had a conversation with Gamer Tag Radio. The three folks this time, not just Danny Pena, who I interviewed a couple of weeks ago, but the whole crew. It was an opportunity I really couldn't turn down. Danny was in LA, he lives in Miami, but he was here recording. He's on the CBS network, play.it, 10-year podcasting veteran. And it was just fascinating to see him at work in his element. And I was so proud of how far he's come and his ability to reach out and look for opportunities to lift other folks higher and get them engaged and part of his success. And so it was really nice to be able to do that. And the feedback was really positive from the Gamertag radio community. They were really happy to have and listen to a conversation with their favorite hosts and learn a little bit more about them, which is, after all, the objective and mission with this show. So if you're new, my name is Harry Duran. Every Monday-ish, I release a new episode, and I call this the podcaster's voice, or behind the podcast. I think back to that VH1 series, Behind the Music. It's sort of like that. I let you in on the lives of some of your favorite and my favorite podcasters. So this week is no different. Someone who's been podcasting for a while now, and his name is Erik Fisher. He's the host of Beyond the To-Do List, a very popular podcast. And we just really went all over the map, as we tend to do with these conversations. And I'm glad we finally got an opportunity to talk, because we connected at the last podcast movement, number 2 in Dallas. And believe it or not, all this time had gone by and we weren't able to connect and make this interview happen. But I'm glad we did. He's really nice guy, and he's just such a wealth of information. His current job is as the social media contact for social media marketing world, and he does a fantastic job with in that role as well. But it's fascinating to get his take on podcasting because he's been listening to them for a while. His influence is Merlin Mann's Back to Work, which you may have remembered Chase Reeves referencing as well. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation and really listen closely for some of the insights that Erik has, having done it so long. He's really, really good at what he does, and it was a pleasure to get to pick his brain and get to know him a little bit better. Erik Fisher.
Hello.
This is probably, in terms of like the ramp up between initial thought of having on the show to actually having on the show, this might be the the longest time in between. But thank you so much for finally making it out to Podcast Junkies.
Yeah, you're welcome. And here's the thing. I don't typically, because I do a show where I talk to other people and record others, I don't typically reach out and say, hey, can I be on your show? Like, that's just, I hate when that happens. And so then I realized podcast movement was coming up, and it was a while ago. Like I'm wearing the shirt now, the Podcast Junkies shirt. Yeah. And you had said, hey, here, have a shirt and you can be on my show. And I'm like, great. So then I remembered, it was okay for me to reach out to you because you had already invited me.
Yeah, I had invited you, and I had wanted to have you on, I think even before podcast movement. I don't know. I think I might have even reached out cold before we even knew each other. So if I go searching through my emails, I'm sure there'll be something.
Yeah,
something there. So how you been?
Nice. I'm great.
Yeah, you excited about podcast movement?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. It's like summer camp for podcasters.
I think the people that know that and have been know exactly, like that's why they're so chomping at the bit. They're so excited because we get to geek out. It's probably like what people who are into like superheroes feel like when Comic-Con comes around.
Comic-Con, yeah. It's like podcaster Comic-Con.
Well, now I'm starting to think we should maybe start getting some more outfits into the mix.
Yeah, like microphones as like nunchucks and stuff.
Or you can dress up as your favorite podcaster.
Oh gosh,
Imagine.
wow. I don't know about that one, but that would be interesting. That would be an interesting.
Well, I can see people dressing up like Sarah Koenig from Serial, to get the glasses on, like a Harry Potter vibe or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, or Marc Maron.
Yeah.
I'd have to do a wig for that one, but still,
I've got to look through my plaid shirt collection and see what I have.
I could probably pull that one off if I had a wig. You're closer, so.
But I definitely don't have ripped jean shorts.
I don't have that either. Like,
did you see
that's
that?
just not my thing. Yeah.
That was crazy. He's just roaming around the post party like in the I think flip flops too. He was flip flops, torn jean shorts, and just like hobnobbing.
I just remember, and I took a picture of this because I wanted to point it out to a friend of mine who wasn't there, who loves his show. It was prior to his keynote where he was sitting down in that conversation, and I had just gotten a selfie with him in the hall, but he was sitting down, like against the wall on the side of the whole keynote auditorium, not in the back in the green room. Yeah. And I thought, that's so cool. Like it's like whatever, does things. So
I think, he just doesn't care, or I don't know that he thought too much about it, that he's literally like I don't want to say podcast god, but everyone there knows who he is, looks up to him, and I would rival, they would want to talk to him as much as a comedian would, right? And for completely different reasons.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's the thing for him, is he's got these two different spheres of notoriety. So this was one of them. I mean, tons of podcasters there, and he had just done that interview with the president a couple weeks prior to that.
Yeah.
So.
And it was crazy that I had reached out to Brendan McDonald, who I had on the show a couple months ago. But I reached out to him like 2 weeks before the Obama interview, not knowing obviously anything about that was going to happen. And he's like, I'm going to be a little busy. I was like, okay, I'll reach out to you in a couple weeks. And then the Obama thing drops, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's what you mean by a little busy.
That's great.
But it worked out. I guess I'm leading up to Marc Maron himself at some point. Got to put the intentions out there.
Yeah.
He is a podcaster, right?
I would say so, yes.
Have you thought, do you listen to his show a lot?
See, here's the thing. Like, I like what he does, and this is going to sound negative, but it's not. I have a friend who really likes his show, and I like it, but not as much as my friend who's a fanatic. And so what I do is, it's one of those ones where I listen to it when there's somebody I really like on it.
Yeah.
Just because there's so many great shows out there. Oh, yeah. And this is one of those ones where it's great and it gets to a real depth with the guest. But if it's a guest I don't know or don't really care about, it's not as big a deal for me. So,
yeah, I mean, at this point, we all have to be picking and choosing. Even with our most favorite podcasts, I'm like, I don't have that half hour.
Yeah.
And as much as I used to listen to every single thing from my favorites, like you said, you now have to be more discerning. And I feel that when I'm producing my own show, I don't know if you've thought of it the same way, but you almost have to make every single episode like be able to stand on its own merits.
Oh, totally. And then here's the thing is, I'll go back to the Marc Maron. What I just said is, had I come across him sooner, I probably would have gotten into a groove of listening to him week after week. I think he does more than one a week though.
Yeah.
But anyway,
yeah.
So I would then be so hooked on his personality or his style or his show that it would be one of those things where I never would want to miss one, regardless of if I knew who the person was or not. That's a really coveted piece of attention space to have from your listeners.
Yeah.
And I know that I have some of those. But I don't have the ego to expect everybody to listen to every episode of mine. So, yeah.
I'm wondering, have there been specific episodes, or maybe just widening it out to other shows? Have you found yourself listening to an episode of a podcast and said, that's something specifically that made me think about how I produce my own show on a regular basis?
That's a really interesting question. So let me rephrase. Like, what you're saying is have I listened to somebody else's episode and then gotten maybe insight onto how to make my show better.
Yeah.
Based on listening to theirs. I would say that one of the ones that I like the most, and I was listening to this probably before I was, I was listening to, it's Dan Benjamin and Merlin Mann, their show Back to Work.
Mm-hmm.
Still, that's the one where I've never missed an episode. And it's going back like 5 years plus at this point. And their banter, their insight, their productivity / family life / tech, all that kind of stuff. It's a big old comedy / tech show. And the way they do their ad reads so naturally and just so give and take, and they present the pain point, but they don't make it like, have you ever insert blank here. Like, they don't do it that way. And that's what I strive for when I have an ad read. Like, that's the way I go. So like, that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Dan does a really good job of that. I listen to him mostly on the podcast method, and he'll literally be like, and then I was walking down the street and holding my daughter's hand, and you with your daughters, and then he just goes into like a commercial. I was like, wait a minute, how do you do that? He just like slipped into the commercial.
He's so good. He's like the podcast ad read ninja. He sneaks up on you, and suddenly you're like, what? You just sold me, and I didn't even know you were telling me about a thing.
Yeah.
So
that's a good model to follow.
Yeah, I really I have always liked the way Dan approaches that, for sure.
What's interesting, that what you brought up about listening to Back to Work for such an extended period of time is, and I think you slightly alluded to it earlier, where if you get in early enough, you become invested in the relationships of the hosts. And over time, they're going to naturally start to reveal things about themselves. And then that are personal, that sometimes don't even have anything to do with the show. And then you start to feel, I imagine it's what people who watch soap operas feel, because they've, over a period of time, these characters grow, and like I feel with Walking Dead or something. Like, I've seen Carl grow from like a boy to a man, and just like, I can't miss it now. Like, I'm missing his whole story arc. But there's an aspect of story arc, growth, family, and just the fact that you've invested the time is like, now you probably get more. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you get more out of the episodes than someone who's just coming in now and doesn't have the back history.
I totally agree. I think that there's this level of personal connection that we all know is inherent in podcasting anyway, with, and we could tout all the, podcasting's this, and this, because it gives you like your listeners, they've got your ear, you're in their ear. And like, anyway, over time, connection over time equals relationship. And so the relationship, if the relationship is already there when a really impactful episode drops, of course the listeners that have been longtime listeners are going to get way more out of it than maybe somebody who just is a first-time listener to that episode. And again, it's like you said, it's based on the fact that they already have this connection with you, the host or the producer, especially if you actually interact with your audience outside of the show itself.
What's been some of the most interesting interactions you've had with listeners to your show?
Well, what was funny was I literally, and this ties in with what we're talking about, I had a guy yesterday who said, all right, I've listened to every single minute of your show. Done. And I said, wait till a little later today. And so I dropped another one, and then he said, all right, he posted a picture on Twitter, said, all right, I've got this lawn here to mow, and I've got your latest episode, and I'm going to get caught right back up. And so that was, could not have come at a better time. Like, the fact that he told me he'd listened to every episode, and the fact that I knew I had one more great one right ready for him that right when he said that. And then the fact that he went and listened to it right away.
That's such a heartwarming feeling. I got a little bit of that because I was wearing the shirt last year at Podcast Movement, and people would just stop and be like, "Oh, I love your show," and you really don't know. I wish Apple would be more open with subscribers, and I would do so much more to like every person on that list. If I just knew, I'd reach out to them. If they were in town, I'd surprise them at their house. Cool stuff like that. It's just a shame that we can't have access to figure out who it is that, is our fans of our show.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, obviously somebody out there who's a marketer or in that realm is, and I guess I am part of that, is saying, get them on your email list. Then you'll know. And like, but you only have an email, or get them into a Facebook group or get, this and this. And again, we can do all that. But sometimes I struggle with that because part of what I want to do is not just interact with every person who's listened. I want to spend time making my show.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to juggle.
Have you had feedback from someone who, because of the information that you've provided on your show, has done something with the information and in a way that's changed their life?
Yeah, I mean, I know that I get emails. I've got that mechanism set up on the site, so people can just send me random emails. And once in a while, I'll just say, hey, go here to the site and click that, and if you have any feedback, anything at all, and they do. And, nothing specific is coming to mind right now, but I've had people say, like, I've restructured my day. Yeah. I'm getting up early, or I finished this project, or I, have made more time to spend with my family. Like all those things that I want them to get out of the show. Like, it's happening. Yeah. So, yeah.
What was the impetus for you, or the inspiration to start something on that topic on the to-do list?
Well, I knew for a while, and so the real short backstory is I'd been a podcast and listener for 11 years now. Like summer 2005, iTunes dropped the podcasting into iTunes on the sidebar there, and I was like, I'm sitting there at my data entry job, and iTunes pops up on my Dell Windows machine there, and it says iTunes has an update. So I said, sure, bathroom break, click. And I went and came back, and it's there, and I'm like, what is this? It's TiVo for radio is what I figured out. I could download these shows and listen to them instead of just music. And that was summer of 2005, fall/December 2005. I found Cliff Ravenscraft after he'd done 2 episodes. And this was him just getting started. Oh, wow. Yeah. And we became friends pretty quickly, like within the next month and a half. First time they ever had guest hosts on anything, I was one of them.
Nice.
And so anyway, been connected with him for a long time. He and I were doing a show called Social Media Serenity from about 2009 to 2011. And at that point, he made a smart productivity move where he backed off and was going to do fewer shows and make them higher quality, be able to focus more time on the show. I mean, because at the time, I think, because he dropped like 3 or 4 shows at that point, he was doing almost 10 shows, different shows a week or something. All these different. Anyway, now
that's Cliff. Right? Yeah, he doesn't do anything half-assed. He's like goes full bore. Let's do. If I could do 1, I could do 5. Right? No problem.
So he brings me that news and says January 2011. That's what's going to happen, or 2012, and. Yeah, that's right. And so I said to myself, all right, I can't not podcast. So what am I going to do? And so over the course of the next 6 months, till the point where I was at what's now known as NMX, but was then Blog World, and it was in New York City that summer. I went there, and I came from there with my idea kind of solidified, where I wanted to, and this was before there was all these, like, there was a fraction of the quote unquote interview style podcasts at this time. I wanted to talk to people, and I wanted to learn from them. And I said, but what do I want to learn? Well, I want to learn how they do the work that they do. How do they do it so well? What do they decide to do or not to do? And as I started self-talking through all of that and taking notes, I realized, oh, this is productivity. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Like, but it can't just be about like how to set up a to-do list and all that. It's got to go beyond that. And I'm like, I caught myself. I'm like, that's the title, Beyond the To-Do List. And so it was born, and I started recording immediately.
So to the question I'm sure all listeners want to have answered is, have you finally made it beyond the to-do list?
Well, yes, obviously. Yeah, I mean, it still plays a major part. Obviously, it's kind of a roadmap for my days and my weeks and even my months, but I don't go just by that. Like, you know, you and I had a different scheduled time for this. And so suddenly it was like, hey, can we move it? Sure. Boom, done. And didn't matter, you know, because I just shifted everything around. It's less being tied to specific tools than it is being kind of, and I'll use the word again, being a productivity ninja where you can flow with what comes at you and then you use it back against it.
Yeah.
And so actually there's a real, what is it? There's a martial arts that's specific. Aikido. Yeah. There you go. I always loved hearing that described where it's like you use the weight of your opponent like right back on them. And I love it.
That's Steven Seagal, right?
It might be. Gosh, I forget what he's done.
I'm tempted in the final post-production to stick a Steven Seagal line.
You better. I'm gonna hold you to that.
I'll do that. So, you know, that's an interesting point because a lot of times with all these methodologies, it's a set of guidelines, but what you need to keep in mind is what your desired outcome is and having the flexibility. And I guess maybe that comes with maturity and trying different systems back and forth. And, you know, GTD was hot for a while and then it wasn't, then it is. And I think with podcasting, it became a little more well-known because David Allen started appearing on podcasts. So were there certain people like David that you followed or had in mind as you were starting the show and as you continued with it?
Well, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, Dan Benjamin and Merlin Mann, like them doing their back to work show was a huge, like, just it broke the ground up. It broke the ice. It broke because I was already doing a show with Cliff, so I knew I could do it. But then I thought, well, can I do I want to do one on my own? In fact, I almost thought, hey, maybe I should do a blog. And then I'm like, nah, I'm going to talk. I want to talk. I'm better off talking. So, but then I was like, do I want to do it with a co-host? I like going back and forth, but I thought, no, you know what? I want to go back and forth with someone else completely. So, but yeah, Merlin, I was already following him prior to him doing that show with Dan. And so that's part of what drew me to that whole show. David Allen for sure. The Dave Ramsey podcast for a while back in the day. Like that was one I kind of listened to religiously. Trying to think if there's any others that were just not miss and really that really shaped my podcasting skills, I guess. One of them actually was the Nerdist podcast. Chris Hardwick, the way that he interviews / has a conversation is really cool to me. Like I really enjoy that. And that's another one of those ones where when there's somebody on there that I really like, that's when I'll listen to that episode. So
was there an aspect of performance in your early life, like in your childhood? Like, you know, there's always the story of maybe a school play or something like that. Was it like that for you?
There are aspects to that. Yes. I am an introvert, but being able to use this technology and have, you know, I often refer to technology and the internet and all that as the Iron Man suit, where I get to put that on and then I get to be more than I am or be me out in public more. But I definitely, I mean, I've done plays, all that kind of stuff. I also had like this little white, probably 5th or 6th grade, this little white cassette tape recorder. And I would, you know, go up and down the dial and hit record. Or the other thing is that my grandfather used to bust out the microphone when me and my 2 younger brothers were little, and he would interview us. And then as time went on, I mean, I still have the tape. You can play it back and you can listen to me like saying stuff at like 3 or 4, and then my brothers. And then as we get older, like I actually pretended to be an NPR guy.
Really?
There. Yeah. It's just really funny to me now to look back and be like, oh my gosh, didn't even realize. Like just it was Rochester, New York. And so it was WXXI, and it was public radio, NPR. And
so how old, were you listening to NPR at that age?
Not necessarily. Like I knew it was public radio. I didn't know what NPR was. It was radio, people talking.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you didn't. You just well, my only early recollection of that type of sound was obviously the Saturday Night Live skit with Alec Baldwin.
Yes.
Pete Sweaty Paul.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, that's how people talk when they're on the radio.
It's true. Like it's funny how that defines like this style of doing things.
Did you you said you still have those tapes?
I have my grandfather has since passed, but I grabbed that tape and I have it.
Okay, if you can get it to us, then we'll. I might have to do some more editing on that.
I'll see.
That would be interesting. So there's people that knew you, like, and that have known you since growing up, and are any of those people surprised at where you ended up, with having your own show and being a podcaster?
No, not necessarily. Like, that's the thing for me that's a little strange is like I'm now talking to some of these people that are slightly celebrity-ish on my show, and it almost comes across when I talk to them about it. They're like, "Yeah, hey, that was a really great episode with so and so," and I'm like, "Oh, thanks for listening." Like, I didn't even think that like they'd listen to me. That's you don't think too much about. Like your wife's cousin or somebody listening to your show. It's like, no, it's just the thing I do. Like,
Do you remember a moment? Because, these stand out. And then when you look back, you're like, oh, why was I so nervous? But do you remember some of those moments when some of these quote unquote bigger names in our space, came on your show and you were maybe slightly nervous?
Well, I was definitely nervous to have gotten David Allen of Getting Things Done so early. And he was so nice and so accommodating. And his wife works with him. And, I figured, what? I better put in the ask and like see when in the future he might be available. And within 24 hours, I had an email back that said, "Hey, great. Love to do it. How's this date and time?" And I'm like, "Yes." Yeah. And it was within a matter of weeks. And I thought, oh gosh, now I have to prep for it. And it was like, oh gosh, I don't know what to do. Like, and this was back at like episode 16 or something. So I just worked real hard, did my homework, and kind of walked through, the conversation a little bit and just said, I mean, you, to a certain extent, you have to wing it or it's going to come across as, very, very stiff. So
can you elaborate on that a bit? That's the idea of winging it, but I'm sure you mean there's some science behind that, right?
Okay, so let's see here. I recently had somebody on, and so I did due diligence, and I read their whole book, and it was one I wanted to read anyway, so that was great.
That's good.
Then I took notes as I went through it, and then what I even did was I said, "Hey," to my friend, "you like this guy, you like his books. Why don't you read this new one of his, and then let's have a conversation."
Oh, wow.
And so I even debriefed with my friend and kind of said, okay, so this is how I want to open. And then I want to hit these major points and kind of have that flow there. And so I went in and I had my notes and everything. And we had Skype issues as we started the conversation. I was like, oh, this is going horrible. And then I was like, okay, let's start over. Boom. And as we started over, like I just broke the ice by saying, okay, we don't have any Skype issues anymore. It's good. It's gone. And we started to laugh a little bit. And then that kind of got into it. So it was like, hey, it was awkward. It was nice kind of, meeting. I was, slightly like, oh my gosh, this guy's, I've read him for a long time. So it's a little bit like daunting to be like talking to you and want to not come across stupid,
Yeah.
And then the secondary pressure of I have to make this good enough for somebody outside of just the two of us talking to want to listen to it also.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It is.
But I learned, and I've learned over time, that being very prepared and having the notes in front of you, but then kind of just winging it anyway, can really benefit you. I really try to picture that, like you and I, we have video on right now, and usually I don't do that, although I could see that being a real benefit, and I probably should try, but who knows? Anyway, trying to get that connection with that other person, especially if you've never met them, can be very helpful. I try to picture that we are both just sitting down, having coffee, and we're having a conversation. And my notes are the oh, I want to make sure that I don't forget to ask them about this thing.
Yeah.
Type thing. If I'm meeting up with a friend I've not seen in a while, you know? And so that's where I go with that. I actually, and I've never told this to anybody, there was somebody who came on my show for the third time, and I didn't prepare for it at all on purpose. One, as time was tight, and two, I knew the two of us knew each other well enough that I could just hit record. We could just talk, and we'd be ready to go.
Yeah.
And you can't tell.
Yeah.
And that was probably my greatest achievement.
Well, I mean, Eric, that just speaks to the ability to pick the right guests for your show, because you're going to put yourself in a position to fail if you try to do that with someone you don't know anything about, because inevitably you'll just stumble and fall. I think there's something to be said about knowing or being strategic about who you have on your show. And I've talked about this in the past. Like, I've had people say, "Hey, can I come on your show?" And I'm like, what's your show about? And that's like has nothing to do with anything that I do. And do you know that I only interview podcasters? And like, oh no, it's like some guy who's like a sales guy or something like that. I'm like, they don't do any homework. So I like having the connection. I make a lot of connections at the conferences, and that's where you and I connected. And you get a feel for someone within the first 30 seconds, and then obviously if you can connect a bit deeper after a couple minutes, then like, okay, they're cool people. You have podcasting in common as a starting point, but obviously we can just take it from there. And I think there's something to be said about being a bit more intelligent about who you have on your show. It's your show at the end of the day, right? You have to have people and have your have your listeners in mind with like every episode, because like you said, is this something that my listeners are going to get value out of?
Yeah, my show is my baby. Like, I can't let somebody come on that I have no idea who they are. And even if I try to do my homework on them, just find them dull myself. You pitching me, and this is a sore spot for me, trust me, because even today it's happened like 3 times in my email.
Preach, brother.
Like it's gotten to the point where, like, seriously, and here's a productivity tip, by the way. What I've done is I have set up that every time somebody sends me an email through my site, I have it set up specifically for the podcast pitches, guest inquiry, whatever, where it skips my inbox, doesn't get marked as read, so it shows up, and I've got a little thing on my Gmail over to the side where it's podcast pitches, and they go there. Yeah. So they don't bog down my inbox. Smart. And then I can see, since I don't have the rule mark it as read, they show up there as unread, and I know how many are sitting there, and I can just click and I can go through them and I can see, oh, okay, yeah, we love your show. We want to have so-and-so list of accolades that they've done about being on being on this and this business podcast, which mine isn't necessarily a business podcast. Yeah. Although I do take entrepreneurs and business people, I want somebody who's done something unique and interesting in terms of how they manage themselves or a team, or has a unique take on productivity, whatever. They so often fail to mention any of that. And it's just like, you don't understand. Like, you're trying to get in front of my audience, but if I let you, you'll suck and I'll suck and no one will listen. So it's a lose situation.
It's a slippery slope, right? Because if you were to do that once, and maybe because the name is big and you're like, okay, this person might help a little bit with visibility, but then there's this aspect of like selling your soul or something like that. And you like, I love the fact that you said that your podcast is your baby, because if you do it once, who's to say that, that's not the gateway to just like, oh, I did it for that one guy, so I'll do it for this guy. And then people listen, and your longtime listeners will catch that. And they're like, oh, this wasn't up to the normal caliber of show that I'm expecting from Eric. So like, what gives, and then you start to lose control of your show, like you said.
Yeah. And for that matter, if it's that slippery slope of this could be the episode that someone decides to stop listening. Yeah. Do I really want to create that episode? No, I don't.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's on a lot of different fronts. That could be the last episode. This could be the first time someone listens to your show.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I don't want this to be someone's first or last episode. I'm gonna have to craft a really great talking point around what we just said here for the next time I talk.
Yeah, because what happens is we don't know. This happens out of our sight, but someone somewhere out there is recommending Beyond the To-Do List, right? I love Erik. Every show's quality. You got to listen to his show, but they can't control what's going to happen or what episode they're going to listen to. And so they're going to come in, and if they're not hearing something, they're like, they're not going to trust this person's recommendation anymore. They're not going to listen to your show. And so it's lose-lose on all fronts.
Yeah. And I just don't want to see that. And so I struggle a little bit. To this point right now, and complete confession, I'll delete half these emails. I just will flat out delete them. I'll just say, look, to myself, you can't spend time worrying about the fact that these people are trying to get in front of your audience. They've already mismatched the audience. The person's already not a fit. Mm-hmm. And then 2, if I write back to them and say, oh, well, thank you for your inquiry. I would like to, please tell me more about why you think. I don't want them to pitch me anymore. You already screwed up. You just did. Sorry. If I don't know you at all, especially if I've never heard of you, there's almost absolutely no chance you're going to get on my show. Sorry.
But it's increasing the frequency of these things.
Oh, it's happening faster and faster. I guarantee you right now that I could go to my email and find another one right away. There's probably one there.
I had Tom Webster on of Edison Research, and
I love him. I love Tom.
He's got this segment where I forgot where it was on his podcast, where he reads the emails of the spammers.
Yes. Oh, I love that. It's so good.
And they're the broken English, and it's Prince of Nigeria needs your help in securing funds for the country's freedom. So you could do the same thing with these emails and just maybe having a spin-off show or something like that.
That would be yeah. You'd have to change the names to protect the spammer, but whatever.
But it's almost it's just something. I know this is something Dave Jackson would do. He just gets these ideas for podcasts. He's I'm going to do a podcast about what not to do cast or something like that.
I may not even do it as a show. What I might do is just literally, if you're familiar with the app Anchor, is just do it there, because then it's not great. I think I'm gonna do some of those. So for real.
Yeah. I just got on Anchor a couple of weeks ago, and I'm liking it a lot. There's I don't know how often you're on there. I've been doing this 30-day test where every day I just record something. I pick a theme, so it's not just, there's folks that get on there and just ramble. And I'm I don't have something to say, and then I get off real quick. Well, it's only 2 minutes.
But I have actually come up with an idea that I'm going to kind of connect with another productivity podcaster, one of the other productivity shows. There are not that many of them. There's probably about 5 or 6 tops that are decent, and I think mine's in there. Yeah. And so he and I came up with this idea. I said, well, now that Anchor, I saw that they came out with an app update, and you can now download an entire story. Yeah. And I thought, so now he and I could go back and forth, but we could also get other people that jump in. And before I download the whole thing, if there's any that are just crap or spammy or whatever, I can just remove them and I can download the whole thing. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to put that out as an episode.
The wheels have been turning ever since that update. And I kind of missed the first wave of Anchor. It's so funny to see all people that are in there and all these big names and, Chris Tucker, Pat Flynn, Gary Vee. But then you see last wave is 3 months ago, 3 months ago, 3 months ago.
Right.
Everyone jumped in and they're this is the next hottest thing. And I was I don't have time to learn it right now, so I'll wait. And then I came in later. And I have this crazy strategy. I jumped on Snapchat, Anchor, and I'm making an Instagram video, and then I'm going Facebook Live in my group, all within the span of 15 minutes. Because I said, if I'm going to take the time to post, and I'm going to be in a point where when I either record something or shoot a quick Snapchat, then that's really not a big jump to shoot a minute video on Instagram, and then to just spend 5 minutes with my Facebook group. And if I have a theme that goes across, it's something that I'm trying just to get more engagement. But I've had people jump back on Anchor that had dropped off because they saw me mention it in Instagram. So I think it's working a little bit.
I really liked it when it first came out. and thought, I'm going to continue using this. And then it kind of faded because I just didn't have time.
Yeah.
But I miss it and I really like it. And so I've been trying to figure out when I can make more time because I really like it.
I think it's like everything else that it can be a rabbit hole. You can start before you realize that you're like hitting the screen, and I'm too old for Tinder, so for me it's just like I just go wave, and then and then I'm just like interesting rabbit hole down there, and then I kind of have to put a timer on myself. So in the vein of productivity, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give this 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I listen to first waves, see who new people are jumping on, and try to engage because when I jumped on, you'd like people to engage with you. So. And make judicious use of the hashtags. So there's podcasts in there. So I kind of focus in that area. But I think it's like everything else. If you prune it, if you follow people and then they start sending silly stuff, then you just unfollow, like I've done with my Facebook feed.
Yeah. Curating, man.
That seems like a sore spot for you there.
It is. Well, I open up my Facebook app on my phone, which I probably should stop doing altogether. And I just start swiping. And as I scroll, I just see some of the same posts I've seen over and over again from other people. Now Facebook doesn't understand. This has nothing to do with podcasting, but
it's even better.
It's, I think Facebook's newsfeed algorithm is completely crap. And here's why. There's no reason why if a friend of mine, even if I think I want to see everything that they ever do on Facebook or that they share or they post, there's no reason Facebook should show me something somebody else posted on Facebook just because this person liked it.
Yeah.
When I scroll through and I see, so-and-so liked this, I'm like, then why are you showing it to me? They didn't share it. They liked it.
Yeah.
Stop it.
It's made me think twice about how I engage because Facebook is like sharing every breadcrumb of thing that I do. Like if I'm interested in an event, I see like somebody liking the fact that I'm interested in an event. I'm like, come on, man. Can't I just like tag something because I might want to go to it later and not have to...
Are you stalking me that badly on Facebook that you have to click like when I show that, that I said might be going to such and such? Like, really? It's just insane.
But I think about the mindset like of someone like, are they really happy that you might be going to an event? Like if you were going that's cool, you're going. But the fact that they're happy or whatever,
reactions.
Or now you can put love or wow or cry or I want someone to cry because I'm going to an event.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just from this point forward start clicking the cry or angry one on every single one of them, no matter what.
That would be hilarious.
Somebody posts some really happy news, cry. Or angry.
Or do it to like every event that they say they're going to go to. I'm like, why are you going there?
Yeah.
Don't go there.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, social time. I mean, here's the thing. Like I want to use social media for good and to interact and engage and all those other words that we hear because it's good for us. But at the same time, like taking too much time to do that, it means you're not making stuff or getting the admin stuff done out of the way so that you can make stuff.
Now that we're on this topic, I want to get your feedback. What is this is a little pet peeve of mine, but what do you think about this idea of people capitalizing on these like, okay, for example, when Prince died, right? All of a sudden in like Medium, I'm like, 15 ways Prince's album changed the course of like human history or and then you see some silly stuff like, why I'm more productive because of listening to Prince's 3 albums. Like, it's so obvious that they're trying to ride the wave. It drives me bananas. Like, I understand the RIP, rest, love your music, play a Prince video, but when they like totally like try to grab onto every little last thread of that coattail, it just, I don't know.
Yeah, it's the newsjacking is just ridiculous. And yeah, I mean, I can't count how many times within 24 hours that I saw how to optimize your Facebook Live based on Chewbacca Mom. And I'm like, come Come on.
Wow.
It just happened. It literally just happened. There's no way you have this properly, fully thought out thesis on how we as a whatever can learn how to be a better leader or a better this. And like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my pet peeve too. I can't stand it.
It is fascinating because I kind of swiped through the Chewbacca Mom. I don't even think I've seen the whole thing. And then,
I never watched it.
Yeah, and I think it was something. I can honestly, I'm just talking out of my butt because I don't know what it was. But all of a sudden, she's getting invited to Facebook. Hasbro has made an action figure of her, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the social / pop culture / just media, it, and we compete with that. We compete with that.
Yes.
For the attention of our podcasts, and that just freaks me out. It's actually one of the reasons why you have to do what you do really well and have a pretty drilled down specific audience that you're going for, and then deliver to them well, because otherwise they will forget you in the midst of everything else. It's insane.
Have you given that thought, or is it just something that comes naturally, this idea of being consistent, showing up week over week, month over month, year over year, like you have, because you're thinking about the fact that you're trying, or not trying, or you're succeeding, and you're building this audience and these loyal fans?
Oh, for sure. And the thing is that I really do hope that, not that I have this need inside me to be known by them and that's why I do it. I want to do it because I want the work to be quality work, and that there's a uniqueness, there's a joy, there's a fulfillment in putting out a great show in and of itself, even if nobody listens or likes it, for that matter. That said, I like that it does. I like that people give accolades and they like it. I mean, I've never won a podcast award in either of the two existing entities. I've been like a finalist on one of them, but whatever. But that's not why I do it. Like, I do it because I just know this is the thing I enjoy doing the most, and it's what I want to do. I think that, for example, I'm doing this show that I've done for the longest. I've got ideas for other shows, and none of them have the same format as this one. So
what podcaster doesn't, right?
Right. Exactly. I hope so. Well, I don't know, maybe. Anyway, I'm excited to do those at some point. I just know that I've got to find out the way to like get some more margin in my life to add those to the production flow. So,
is this one of the things that's been the most satisfying or rewarding as you think about, some of the major accomplishments in your life?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, without a doubt, I can say yes. And here's why. Because it was one of those things where not only do I feel like I've gotten to a point where I just really do it well, it's that I've enjoyed doing it the whole time, even when it's been hard. And even when I've worked through challenges in the workflow, it's been rewarding. It's one of those things where it's the hardest thing and the best thing at the same time to do. And yet I really don't want to do anything else. Like, I would rather spend time brainstorming ideas, figuring out how to do it, putting it out there, and whether it takes or not, continue doing it or doing other things like it moving forward. It's unique. It did not exist when I was in college to choose as a major, which is great because, things keep changing. Who knows? Maybe I won't be a podcaster for the rest of my life, but I sure don't see that happening.
What's interesting is I think in the beginning we think of ourselves as podcasters, but what we're doing is entertaining, educating, right? And that can be applied. What are the mediums, what are the platforms of the future going to be? I envision a scenario where I'm doing Podcast Junkies on TV or on a YouTube channel,
right?
And it's two chairs there and something a variation of Between Two Ferns.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's a great idea. I think that, we don't know, but like, just like podcasting did not exist and even YouTube did not exist for a while. I've said this a couple of times. If I'd known YouTube was coming, I would have continued honing my iMovie skills years and years ago and didn't know. And now we know. Well, I mean, we're getting to that place where like Facebook Live makes it to where you can go live in front of the entire world.
Yep.
And
for good or for bad,
for better, for worse. But what are you going to do with it? And just get out there, getting out there and practicing. So yeah. And what was great for me was I was able to practice for so long with Cliff, and even before that with another friend. We did a comedy show, and so I was able to practice in public and get hit up towards my 10,000 hour Malcolm Gladwell.
Who are some of your comedy heroes?
Oh gosh. Well, Seinfeld is one of them.
Yeah.
Jim Gaffigan I really like, especially now. I'm trying to think of who else just really. Let's see here.
Gaffigan's clean, right?
He is, yeah.
And what's interesting, he was just on the Honda commercial, I think, right?
Mm-hmm. He's everywhere right now.
Well, what's funny is because it's one of those comics that you just see their arc, right? They're early on, and then you see them here and there in comedy specials, and then they pop up in a national commercial, and then it's like good for him. Like he just stayed. It's one of those things about staying true to who you are and being good at what you do day in and day out, and eventually like people discover you and like kind of run your own race.
I've studied his career a bit actually, and yeah, the fact that he even like works with his wife on his routines, like that, just I can't imagine how that works, but it works for them. So even like Stephen Wright back in the day, trying to think of who else, but yeah, you study these people who. It's not easy when you start out, but then you practice and you get better and better at doing it, and they make it look easy when they're up on stage.
Stephen Wright, man, just kind of like the things that he says, like make you think and laugh, right, at the same time. But then I do the breakdown of like the analysis of like who like thinks like that? Like how does a mind work that can actually articulate a thought? Like some of the jokes that Stephen Wright has said is like. It's like the Far Side cartoons or something like that. Yeah,
he's got that. He had. No, he's around. What am I thinking? He's not dead. Jeez, that's horrible. Why did I think he was?
Sorry.
Because so many of them are. To be honest, so many of the great ones have.
Sorry, Stephen.
But he has this unique lens that he works at, or that he looks at the world through, and then when you look at it too, you're like, oh yeah, I guess that does make sense in a weird, twisted way. But yeah.
So when you think about, I don't know if you give this thought in terms of what you have accomplished, what you want to accomplish, your quote unquote legacy. If you have given that some thought, what would you say is something that's left for you to do?
Well, I mean, I would say that it's underrated. It's underrated to not shoot for super success.
Yeah.
And I don't want that. I want to be good at what I do, enjoy the level that I'm at with it, obviously grow in being able to work on the craft of podcasting and become better and better at it, and just continue to enjoy doing it and branching out in doing different types of that. But I would say just being able to continue to do it and not have it be this thing where it's just a side project.
Yeah. That
would be nice. And on top of that, just have it be something where maybe I incorporate other family members or just that I have that life balance. Or you see, balance is not even the right word. If anybody listens to my show, it's like work-life balance is not really a thing. It's
exactly.
We all try to balance. It's more like, no, you shift from side to side as you're walking across the tightrope, and then you get to the other side, and then it's another season. So I don't know. My success is I want my family to, that's the thing. Like my success is family, like close-knit, tight relationships with family and friends, and then to continue to do the thing that I love, which is primarily podcasting. That's success for me.
Yeah.
I don't want more than that.
That's great. Have you thought about the friendships that you would not have were it not for podcasting?
I think about that all the time. And that is, and to go back to where we began, that's one of the reasons I'm so psyched about going to podcast movement, is because there's going to be a group of people there that I don't see that often, other than through scrolling through Facebook and or private calls, and just don't see them as much face to face and get to hang out. And that's my goal this time around, is just to be with those friends.
Someone was asking me about which sessions I'm going to be checking out. I'm like, I don't know that I'm going to be checking out that many, because the hallway conversations for me and the one-on-one time is really like where I get the most out of it. And I think at some point they just regurgitate the topics, and I think people who've been doing it for a while, it's like you said, they're so excited. We get that small window of time to connect with our podcasting family that we want to squeeze every last bit out of it.
Totally. Yeah, that's my approach too. I may look through and see if any of my friends are giving something, like a talk that, even if I don't need to hear it, like I show up and be in the front row for them.
For
like
support,
that,
of course,
that's cool. Yeah. So.
And so, how you mentioned family? How important is family in getting you to where you are now?
Well, I mean, you mean how important is it that they've supported me? Yeah. I mean, my wife says, podcasting's your part-time job. So, if you got to make time for it, you do it. And luckily it's brought in some money here and there that I can throw on bills and pay stuff down. And who knows if I can magnify or multiply that to a nice percentage higher than where it's at right now, that's all I'm asking for. I enjoy doing the work. So,
yeah, a lot of times I think, the listeners just hear us on the microphone, but they don't understand what had to happen or the support we needed to have to be able to do that and to deal with this. When my wife realized that this is more than a hobby and it's like I'm something gonna be doing for the foreseeable future, then there's something to be said for the patience she's having. So.
I'll even say this, that the conversation that I had with my friend, where I kind of debriefed about the show that I was going to do, my wife listened in on that conversation and even interjected here and there. And so that was actually a new feeling for me, where she was inserting her opinion or perspective. And so I kind of gauged, like, she would say, oh yeah, I hate when this happens or that. And it's like, okay, all right, audience feedback, live audience feedback for the show. So
that's very cool.
Yeah, I really like that.
What have you changed your mind about recently?
What have I changed my mind about recently? Does it have to be podcast related?
No,
or
not at all?
I have for a long time, and here's a productivity tip again. One of the guys I work with, Jeff C., he's the Manly Pinterest Tips podcast guy. He and I have both been trying to we're in a mastermind together, and he said, yeah, I'm pretty much quitting TV at this point. I'm like, really? But I'm like, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, no, you know what? Like, he said, I'll watch all those shows when I'm retired. And I think that's a great way to look at it. If something's really worth watching, like, yeah, it'll be out for a while. It'll be acclaimed enough. You'll find out that it had good closure for the finale, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, I think that's a good approach, especially with brand new shows that come out. And so I've changed my mind, and I am going back towards that. I used to have a no new shows policy, and I've switched that back on. No new show coming out, in a TV season will I even give time of day, and actually try to phase out the old ones. I've really actually whittled it down to a small handful at this point that I even watch.
That's an interesting strategy, because it's hard to resist, especially with social media, this wave of interest. I mean, apparently the last episode of Game of Thrones was like rated 10 out of 10 on IMDb. Like, that's
crazy,
which is bananas. I don't know if that's ever happened, but yeah, that's an interesting strategy, because I don't know that I would recommend Lost to people now, after having suffered through the way they wrapped that up was pretty bad.
Yeah, and I forgave a bit of it early on, and then that kind of went away, and then I came back to it again. I mean, I kind of waffled on it back and forth, where I'm like, oh, that was good, that was good, and then I went to, no, that was okay, and then I was like, no, maybe it kind of wasn't, and honestly, I analyzed that thing to death, because anyway, talk about having coming at it from a production value or like workflow is just this idea of your audience's expectation and how they're talking about this show online. You're setting yourself up for failure or to be true as an artist if you stick the landing and do the thing that you want to do versus what they're asking for. You saw them asking, this is way not podcasting. You saw for 6 years people talking conspiracy stuff, and you still painted with those colors and those brushes the entire time, even though you knew you were never going to pay off 90% of what you showed us. And anyway, I guess you can tell where I landed on it.
They painted themselves into a corner. I mean, come on. Like, did you not think people were going to be asking questions about every leaf on a tree in that show? Like,
you show a book on screen. Obviously, we're going to pick that up and leaf through it. And, maybe this applies to this aspect or what this is or how this works. And it's like, anyway,
what's the one most misunderstood thing about you?
Misunderstood. I don't know. Like, I think it's possibly the whole, I come across as somewhat outgoing or extrovertish, and I can be. That's the stage presence thing. Like right now, like, hey, I'm right here. It's Erik Fisher. It's like, as soon as we're done, like, I'm gonna turn my laptop off for the day and I'm gonna go crawl in a corner and no, I'm kidding. I'm gonna I am an introvert. Like, I recharge, and it's not a bad thing, but I recharge not being around people. So there's actually, it's rare. There's probably few select people where I can recharge with them. But yeah, I think that's probably the most misunderstood thing about me is that, like, I come across as like very, I'm not approachable. Don't get me wrong.
Everyone's going to be avoiding you at podcast movement.
I know. I was going to say, no, don't not say hi. Like, that's not it. Like, it's just that I will probably, after a stretch of time, like, okay, go into the room for half an hour to recharge and then come back down. So.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of podcasters have mentioned that they're introverts, and you wouldn't guess that from their podcast.
But I would not be surprised because, again, the technology is now enabling us introverts to connect in a way that we couldn't before.
Which is great.
It is great. I love it. I'm thankful.
Yeah. Well, Erik, this has been a great conversation, and we jumped all over the place, which is how I love it. Thank you so much for coming on, and you definitely delivered on all fronts for me.
Well, thank you. It's great to be part of the community of podcasting, and as you can tell, I'm passionate about it.
Yeah, and I love it when we spend half the show not talking about podcasting.
Nice.
Well, this was the point. I mean, in the beginning, naturally, podcasting talked to podcasters, but then the show began to grow into the personalities behind the microphone, and I just find that much more interesting. Because at the end of the day, there's not like one personality type for a podcaster, right? We have so many varied lives, and we just happen to have this one thing in common. So that's why I dig deep on that stuff.
Yeah, I love it. Well, you're doing a great job.
I appreciate it.
This was fun.
So what's the best place for folks to track you down?
Yeah, well, best place, there's two places. Go to either beyondthetodolist.com, where the show is, and you can connect with me in all the different ways there, or hit me up on Twitter. It's twitter.com/Erik with a J, the letter K. Wait, Erik with a K, the letter J, Fisher. Man, I have never screwed that up, ever.
Erik with a J. There's people scratching their head like...
Erik with a J. Yes. No, it's Erik with a K. Erik with a K, the letter J, Fisher.
You're going to have to go by erikwithaj.com.
I'm not doing that.
Thank you so much. Is there anything you got coming up that you want folks to know about a project you're working on?
No, just planning out some really awesome future episodes of the show.
Okay.
So just check them out.
Okay.
Skim through and see if you notice anybody you like and listen to that one.
That's a good idea. Well, thanks so much, and I'll let you go back and crawl into your corner.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye.
So thanks to Erik for that engaging conversation. I hope you learned a little bit more about him. beyond his roles as host of Beyond the To-Do List and as the social community manager for social media marketing world. The episode this week is brought to you by CastSource. So I've talked about it a couple times, but it's something that's been providing value for me and clients, and it's a transcription service. And CastSource is targeted at podcasters specifically. And one of the best things about it is that it allows you to customize the output. So if you need something that's going to be PDF format, a customized HTML for posting on your website, or simply a text file, they can customize the output to match whatever your need is. Accuracy is over 99%, and turnaround time is within 24 to 48 hours. So give them a shot and let them know that Harry sent you. Head on over to podcastjunkies.com/castsource. We're also a proud member of the Podcastica Network. Check out the fine stable of shows. I don't know who actually talks like that, but I just thought I'd say that right now. The fine stable of shows at podcastica.com. Intro and outro music, as always, composed by Cedar and Soil. Check out his music, cedarsoil.com. Don't forget, you can always subscribe to the show at podcastjunkies.com/iTunes or /GP for Google Play Music. The retention hashtag for this week is going to be hashtag #ToDoErik. So it's TODOERIK. And you can tag Erik at Erik J. Fisher. That's ERIKJ Fisher, FISHER. And myself, podcast_junkies, with the hashtag #ToDoErik. Let us know you made it this far. It's always fun to see the engagement on a regular basis. So I'm happy to see some of the folks coming over to some of the different channels that I've been testing: Anchor FM, Instagram, and the Podcast Junkies page. So looking to increase the engagement with all of you, and you all have a channel of choice. And now you can't say that there's no way you can reach me. So this is the last episode that will be live before podcast movement. So we're going to have some interesting conversations with some of my favorite folks this upcoming week in Chicago, Chi-Town. So stay tuned for a recap of that. I may do a bonus episode, but we'll still stay on schedule. Next week, I have a great conversation with Corey Finneran. He's the host of Ivy Envy and Podcasters Group Therapy. So until then, I'll be doing a lot of nerding out with my fellow podcast friends and family this upcoming week. And more likely than not, I'll be looking forward to engaging with some of you there, because I did that last week and it was last year, and it was such a fun time. So if you're listening, please look for me. I'll be in the obnoxiously orange Podcast Junkies shirt. Thanks all. Have a fantastic week. Have a fantastic day, and talk to you next week.